Alright, I wanted to discuss Elden Ring, seeing as it's coming out in just a few weeks actually, February 24th, 2022 to be exact. And I've been doing my best to avoid any media surrounding it. Any gameplay, the closed beta, any trailers, nothing. I'm not watching anything except for clickbait articles and videos discussing the difficulty and this whole discourse around difficulty settings as it relates to the Souls series. And then I got into that rabbit hole and saw some producer and director quotes that I want to be the focus of this video, but I suppose I should clarify my stance on the subject, right? So, and that is, I don't believe there should be any easy mode, any easy setting or slider or anything like that. It's already a curated experience enough, and before I even get into that, I should mention this wouldn't really apply to accessibility options. I want to be very clear about that. Obviously, if the Souls team felt the need and they had the resources, then sure, yeah, obviously controller options or color correcting or what else, closed captioning, any sort of options to help with people's impairments, for those who want to engage with the series honestly. But I mentioned curated experience. I mean, the design of the game, the character classes, the enemy placement, the world design, the platforming, it's all curated for you. It's the team goes to great lengths to have you engage in a certain way, and different experience can be born of it, and different strategies. And I know this is a bit of both these words have been memed, but that pride and accomplishment you get after completing a certain stage or a certain boss, beating a certain boss in the game, that really holds strong in this. And I also feel as if these demands were met for an easy mode, it would be stifling the artistic vision. It would be sacrificing that vision, because think about it, the series is a dark fantasy, right? That's the dark fantasy element, and it has plenty of themes of nihilism within the lore and story. And I don't feel as if those elements would stand as strong without the level of difficulty in this series. I don't feel like the most would pay attention to those elements, or give those elements weight if it wasn't for the difficulty. And I would hope no one would do this with film or music or paintings and art in general, that they should be altered to appeal to the largest audience possible. You either enjoy something or you don't. And for a long time, I didn't even enjoy Dark Souls, and I just had the patience to pull through with it. And just before I get into the quotes, I really need to bring up my most hated argument, that being, what would an easy mode take away from any individual player? And it's like, right, it wouldn't take anything away from me. That's true. And it wouldn't take anything away from any other Souls enjoyer. Nothing directly. However, it does absorb resources and time from development, or at least you would hope it would, because you would want some care and thought into this easy mode, right? And that could potentially be a lesser experience overall, because now they have a whole nother element to focus on, and maybe the whole project would suffer as a whole, right? Just potentially. And I had a friend come up with a compromise. He was like, why don't you just break the game? Don't even play test it. Like, just have infinite god mode. The main player can be invincible and put all the enemy health to 1 HP. And I'm like, you know what? And don't even play test it either. You know what? Yeah, go for it. I mean, in that case, if you're asking for an easy mode, you're asking not to engage with the game. And of course, this is just how I feel personally. I'm not the producer or director, right? So let's see how they feel about it. They clearly understand FromSoft's reputation at this point. So here we are with the interview with the producer Yasuhiro Kitao, and this was at the Taipei Game Show. He had mentioned Elden Ring is the perfect title for those who have been interested in our games in the past, but who have been put off by concerns about the games being too difficult, Kitao says in a response to a question about FromSoft's reputation. Elden Ring also features a robust character development system with online support. You can always get help with the harder parts in order to make your way through the game, so offering some advice there for those who find it too challenging. With the game's world being so large that can produce real depth and breadth of enjoyment, it can also lead to unnecessary stress from some players. The dev team has been very careful to avoid that where possible. And that's actually getting to the open world, and now I want to switch to Hidetaka Miyazaki's quotes. Let's see. And starting with that open world, but we'll get back to the multiplayer, those two elements, open world and multiplayer. So let's see, he was asked, what were your biggest lessons learned in making a sprawling open world game? He responds, there were two major challenges we faced developing Elden Ring. The first was expanding upon the level of freedom, more so than our previous games. Elden Ring has a vast world with an open overworld, so we were faced with the ordeal of how to maintain our gameplay style while offering a renewed sense of openness. So with the elements like balancing the player's exploration alongside boss fights, the order of progression that the players go through the game, the progression of the events themselves throughout the map, trying to expand on our player freedom while balancing. All of this was a significant challenge, but we learned many great lessons in attempting to achieve this. He also mentions, just to close off on the open world aspect, another challenge making an open world is the tempo and pacing of the player's progression, essentially trying to balance how the player paces themselves as they explore the vast open-ended map, and how the factors into the scope of freedom and progression they provide. So we also learned some valuable lessons while making adjustments in that regard. And here he gets asked directly about game difficulty and accessibility, and keeping that in mind. And he says, yes, we have, and it's a valid discussion. I feel like our approach to these games, not just Elden Ring, is to design them to encourage the player to overcome adversity. We don't try to force difficulty or make things hard for the sake of it. We want players to use their cunning, study the game, memorize what's happening, and learn from their mistakes. We don't want players feeling like the game is unfairly punishing, but rather there's a chance to win in a difficult encounter and make progress. We understand that Souls-like games are regularly associated with impossible levels of difficulty with high barriers to entry, but we want to try to design games to make the cycle of repeatedly trying to overcome these challenges enjoyable in itself. So we hope that with Elden Ring and the new options it provides, it will be a success in that respect. In Elden Ring, we have not intentionally tried to lower the game's difficulty, but I think more players will finish it this time. As I mentioned, the player's level of freedom to progress through the world or return to a challenge later are all elements that I feel will help people get through the game at a more leisurely pace. Also, there isn't a focus on pure action. The player has more agency to dictate their approach against, for example, the field bosses in the overworld and how they utilize stealth in various situations. We've even reduced the number of hoops that you'll have to jump through to enjoy it in multiplayer. So we hope the player embraces that idea of receiving help from others, and we feel like the overall clear rate will go up this time because of these things. After hearing all those quotes, I felt like they didn't change much from what they've done before. I feel like they just spun old as new. Like this whole idea of like, oh, you have this whole open world and you can pace yourself and like you can take on challenges when you're ready to take them on. I feel like even in the older games, none of those were open world either, but I'm just like, oh yeah, just grind as much as you want, and then when you're ready to take on the next challenge, you can do it. And with the multiplayer, you just don't have to jump around a lot of hoops. Because I should have brought that up, actually, when I was discussing it earlier. multiplayer is the easy mode. If you want an easy mode version, of course, a lot of the times they've been only set so you can only face the boss with another person, and in other cases they've kind of loosened it up. But I feel like in Elden Ring, what they're implying is that since it's so much easier, you can go around and play. I don't know. Maybe you can play the whole game in multiplayer, and that's your easy mode right there. And yeah, I mean, I just believe it was just good PR. That all sounded like a bunch of gobbledygook nonsense. I don't think they've really done much. But there is one quote here that that was interesting and useful for newcomers or those who are kind of like, oh, I don't know about these games. I know they're popular, but I don't know about getting into them. They seem too difficult. There is one useful quote here, and that is from Miyazaki, the director. He mentions, as for starting classes, it's entirely up to the player. It's an RPG. They can approach it however they like and choose whichever looks coolest to them, but I would recommend against choosing the naked one, known as the Wretch. As before, it's probably the most difficult starting class, so avoid that class. Just a little tip there, and there's been those before. That's another thing that they just brought back, but that's actually a useful bit of advice, I think. I believe it's just good PR. I think people are making too big of a deal about them mentioning the fact that there's a higher clear rate on this. I feel very strongly that they haven't shifted that far off. And I suppose we'll just need to wait until the game releases, maybe, or there's already a video out there, some guy who already completed the game, some video that says, oh, it's supremely easy, or something like that. But I guess I'll just have to wait and find out. It's on February 24th.